Hello, everybody. This is Martha Alter Hines with Living the One Light. All right, in this video, I'm excited. um, so I'm being asked to speak about what I'm feeling more and more is like a cutting edge of astrology, and maybe your role in it, and our role in it, all of our roles in it, which is part of what I'm going to talk about. The part of that cutting edge, or the where I feel like I'm being encouraged to go with astrology, is one of the many things that I'm going to talk about in this video, is the fact that I really feel strongly that our relationship to astrology and our relationship to many things in life is being held in a way where we're really being given the opportunity to be a participant in all of it, in the knowing of it, in the discovery of it, in the rediscovery of it, in the remembering of it, so that we're switching partly from more of a top-down way of learning and a top-down way of coming to our conclusions about things, and both honoring history, honoring tradition, but also holding space for ourselves to be part of the unfolding and the evolution of our relationship to astrology, but actually of our relationship to life. So, yeah, there's so much here that I want to talk about, and I'm on fire about it. So here we go. And so just to kind of give you a sense of the preview of what I'm going to talk about. So I am going to talk about, in general, my set of values around my approach to astrology, but I'm also going to use the sun as an example, and just to ground in a little bit more of what I'm trying to get out here. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the workshop that I have coming up on this Thursday, January 25th, which happens to be on the same day as the full moon in Leo. And maybe it's perfect that I'm feeling called to talk about the sun, because Leo is ruled by the sun. And if you are seeing this video after the 25th, this workshop will be recorded and available indefinitely. And this workshop is actually a preliminary workshop for the year-long Infinite Soul Wisdom Astrology 101 course that I'm holding starting on February 1st. So next Thursday. I'm recording this on Monday, January 22nd, 2024. And they're all available even if you're seeing this video after either of those begin. So, okay. So the workshop that I'm holding on January 25th, 2024 is called The Anatomy and the Soul of the Cosmos. And what I'm going to be doing in that workshop, I'll detail it a little more in a minute, but it's really honestly going to be probably the first place where I am going to hold space for us to be with the cosmos and with our relationship to astrology in the ways I'm about to talk about. So in this whole new approach to astrology that I'm being asked to be part of, and inviting you to be part of if it's calling to you. Okay, so what am I getting at? Let me begin. Okay. So, if we take the sun as an example, in the way that I've been taught astrology, and I think most people learn astrology, there are, incredibly wonderful aspects of it, and I'm not advocating any kind of throwing any baby out with any bathwater. So I'm not rejecting any of it. What I'm more advocating and really feeling called into myself is an opening up of how we approach things. Okay, so let's take the sun as an example. When we have a relationship to anything in the cosmos, anything in life, anything in an astrology chart, there are infinite ways we can approach it, of course. And typically, when I've been taught how to look at an astrology chart, like the sun in, let's say, my own astrology chart, we see the sun as a glyph, and the glyph is a circle with a dot in it, and it's on a two-dimensional screen or on a paper. And we look at that two-dimensional circle with the dot, and we think of it as the sun in our chart. And then we have a whole set of attributes that go along with that notion of the sun in astrology chart. So, for example, we think of the sun, among other things, as, our solar purpose in this life, where we maybe shine, where we want to shine, where we want to be seen, things along those lines, sense of courage, I think, sense of coming from the heart. Lots of really beautiful, wonderful attributes, and I don't disagree with any of it. And then, though, what happens when we drop into our relationship with the sun, not only as this two-dimensional circle with a dot, but we actually learn about the sun, the actual sun, because that's what that circle with the dot is representing, right? So when we were born, so the astrology chart it's trying to be a snapshot of the moment we were born, like a picture that represents the cosmos in the moment we were born. And we know that a picture of anything isn't the real thing, but it's a representation. And so it's trying to be kind of almost like I think of it sometimes as like a template or like a hologram of where I definitely, when I look at an astrology chart and I'm doing a reading with somebody, or I'm looking at my own chart, whatever it happens to be, for sure, the chart comes alive. I mean, it's not, the two-dimensional chart doesn't not hold value. It holds a lot of value for me, and I think for a lot of us. So again, I'm not throwing babies out with bathwater. I'm naming what I've typically been doing or taught, and then I'm opening it up for a bigger picture. So I will look at that two-dimensional chart, and like I said, it does come alive. It becomes like it will even talk to me, and I would say even the spirit world and the cosmos itself and the person's being will even speak to me through the chart. So it absolutely has a really beautiful purpose. And something I've been sitting with more and more and more is when I approach the astrology chart like that, it's missing most of reality, right? So let's say let's take my own chart. So I happen to have been born right at sunset and moon rise. So I was born literally I was born on a full moon, and I was born the exact moment the moon was on the horizon, about to rise, and the sun was setting. um, and so if I were to look at my chart just in the two-dimensional sense, I would see, okay, I have sun in my 7th house, I have moon on my ascendant. I can come up with all kinds of really, really helpful explanations from that. But if I take a moment and drop in and actually sit with that moment of when I was born. So I was born in Bangkok, Thailand. So I was born in Bangkok, Thailand, and the full moon was on the horizon and the sun was setting. Okay, just that, right? And of course, there's everything else in the cosmos was going on too, and my chart obviously includes more than my sun and my moon, but just even if we just take that, because I'm trying to focus here on the sun. That when I feel into that, something I notice immediately that I don't pay attention to when I'm just looking at the two-dimensional chart is if you just imagine being outside the hospital where I was born in that moment, and you knew that, like, let's say you cared about that baby for some whatever, you're the grandparent or you're the friend or whatever, and there's this baby being born in the hospital, and you know this, and you're outside, and the sun is setting, so it's dusk, and the full moon is about to rise. Well, for me, what becomes really prominent in that moment is the moon, right? Like I'm anticipating that big full moon just about to rise. So it's like I get chills. It's like what I'm feeling when I feel into that moment is it's like the moon is greeting the baby. That's what comes to me. And there's so many, I could just drop into all kinds of other things about that moment of my own birth, and the ways in which it would have been so alive, literally, cosmically alive in that moment. And that's true in any moment. So all of our birth charts have that aliveness. Literally, it's the cosmos is alive. We're alive in any moment we are born. The baby, emerging from the mother is a miraculous moment. And there's a quality to all of the cosmos, all of existence greeting that new baby being born, right? So in my case, I would say, like, when I really feel into that, I especially can feel how it's a sense of that big full moon basically being birthed at the same time I'm being birthed, which is profound. Like, wow. Right. So then we could go layer by layer by layer, just feeling into that moment. Okay. And then the sun is setting, right? So the sun is kind of like taking a back seat in a sense, or there's so many different ways you could feel. There's no right or wrong, I feel like, when you're feeling into that, but it's like the sun has done its job in the day, and now it's going to rest, or it's going to the underworld, or you could come up with all kinds of ways that feels to you. Okay, so that's layer number one. If we just, instead of looking at the two-dimensional chart, we actually feel into what the real moment was like. It's a whole different ballgame, right? Number two, second layer with it. If I'm thinking just about the sun, and the sun, in any moment. So there are different layers of thinking about anything. Okay, so we have the two-dimensional circle with the dot, sun. We have the image that I just described of the actual real sun here on Earth. From our perspective, the sun was setting. But then there's also this other layer of the life of the sun itself, right? So when we try to understand what role does the sun have in our lives, in the cosmos, in existence, in an astrology chart, something that I'm going to be doing in this workshop I have coming up on, the anatomy and the soul of the cosmos, and then also much more extensively and much more in depth in the Astrology 101 course that's starting on February 1st, is that with every planet, we're going to dive really deeply into the science of the actual being, the actual planet. So, for example, this is so cool. I don't know if you know these things. I didn't know these things until recently about the sun. Okay, so how does this change our perspective on the sun to know these things? Because I've been diving deep on nasa.gov. It's really, really fun. I've been reading. They have so many wonderful resources, and I'm going to be providing a lot of links to these resources and things in the obviously in the Astrology 101 course, but also even in just this workshop I have coming on Thursday. Yeah, just like so cool, all these things. And just as a side note, something I'm noticing is that there are a lot of resources out there for kids on various aspects of astronomy, right? And why shouldn't adults also enjoy the stuff for kids? It's actually really informative. because I was never taught, the lots and lots of details about various astronomical things, even though I was very sciencey and whatever, but there's a lot out there for kids that's explained in a really simple, easy way, and it's fun. It's more fun. Like, for example, I bought myself, I have 2 kids, but I bought these for myself. They could use them too if they wanted. But for example, this astronomy activity book for kids. And there's actually a lot in here that I didn't know. So it's pretty funny. So that's a side note. I highly recommend doing that. And NASA has a website for kids where they describe lots of things in very easy to understand ways. And then they have links on the kids site to, more grown up, more detailed information if you want that. But if you want a starting place, honestly, truly get a book for 5 to 7-year-olds and read that. Why not? Like, really, why not? Okay. Anyway, that's my little side note there. But okay. So for example, so cool about the sun. I love this stuff. Okay, did you know? I did not know this until recently. Did you know that obviously the sun is, a ball of fire, plasma. And we know about the solar flares and the sunspots and the fact that it's very alive. We know that. Here's what I didn't know. Maybe you already knew this. I did not know this. Did you know that the sun has an 11-year cycle where so first of all, in that 11-year cycle, the 11-year cycle is a cycle where every 11 years, the magnetic poles of the sun flip. So every 22 years, the north pole of the sun will be back in the same place it was before. So every 11 years, the north pole of the sun switches to be the south pole and vice versa, right? And so the reason for that, as people from NASA talk about, I'm not an expert in these. I'm obviously not an astronomer and not an expert, but I'm just telling you what I've been learning from nasa.gov. Because obviously the sun is a very alive, highly charged magnetic being, and it's in constant motion. So it rotates, it's moving through, around the center of our galaxy, and our galaxy is moving. So it's in the sun itself, and everything is in this constant motion. But then the being of the sun also has its own cycles and it's so dynamic and so alive. And I mean, that's just fascinating to me that it flips its magnetic poles every 11 years. I need to sit with that. I mean, what is that about? What does that feel like? How does that, if we're going to think about our relationship to the sun, I don't have any answers to this. This is part of what we're going to dive into in the Astrology 101 course. We're going to spend a month on each zodiac sign. And then in that month, we will focus on the planets that are associated with that sign, and actually also the constellations associated with that time of the year. So we're going to focus on the sun in the month that we're doing Leo. And so we're going to have a whole month where we're focused on Leo, the sun, etc. Right? And so yeah, so that's where we're going to really dive deep. Okay. So we know what the sun, I'm going to teach, okay, in evolutionary astrology, in lots of traditions of astrology, the sun, when we look at the 2-dimensional circle with the dot, typically we think of it as, the things I just described, like where we shine in the world, where we need to be recognized, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's great. We're not throwing that out. That is important. There have been centuries of humans relating to the sun and lots of deep wisdom that probably has brought forward that knowledge and that wisdom about our relationship to the sun and the role that the sun plays in astrology, etc. But what about all of this knowledge that we also do have about the actual being of the sun, the actual scientific presence of the sun? So, for example, that one of the things I personally want to sit with is, yeah, what does it mean that the sun flips its magnetic poles every 11 years? I didn't even know I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know that was a thing, that the magnetic poles could flip. Imagine if the Earth did that. Whoa, you know? Yeah. And then I also, just as my own little tangent, I mean, I'm thinking like, wow, that's really interesting also because, the Jupiter cycle is about every 12 years. The nodal cycle has a half. Well, okay, so the sun cycle is a total of 22 years. The nodal the nodes of the moon go around the zodiac once every 18 and a half, 19 years. So, I mean, it's not the exact same, but it's like a similar kind of a rhythm where Jupiter is going around every 12 years. The nodes are going around every 18 and a half, 19 years. And then the sun is flipping direction of its magnetic poles every 22 years. That's, it's just something I just personally want to be with, because these are all in a dance together. Our relationship to the moon, our relationship to the sun, and then Jupiter's relationship to the sun. I mean, it's all part of the same system. So there's this dance going on in the cosmos that we are part of. And yeah, it's just many, it's just layer after layer after layer that I think is important to know exists. And then I personally don't feel like I want to draw absolute conclusions about it. It's more that I want to be aware of it and feel into it. The other thing about the sun cycle is that, so every 11 years, the magnetic poles of the sun switch. But the other thing that, some astrologers have been talking, like Pam Gregory has been talking about, is the sun also, in that 11-year cycle, but it's not this is not an exact 11-year phenomenon, is that the activity of the sun increases and decreases at a regular rate approximately every 11 years. But according to NASA, this can vary. Like the cycle can be more of an 8-year period or a more of an 8 to 14 years, but on average about every 11 years, where the activity of the sunspots will decrease sometimes down to almost nothing. So you can sometimes at certain points in the cycle, there's almost no sunspots or no sunspots for a while. And then, as we're getting to right now, it's thought it's going to be peaking in 2024. Then there'll be like this increase of activity of the sunspots and of that magnetic dynamic activity going on with the sun itself, right? So why again, I don't feel like I have any absolute answers about this, but I do feel like it's really important to know this and to feel into it. So given that we are currently in the time of the sun cycle with the sun activity cycle, where it's getting to almost its peak. It's going to probably peak in 2024. Something that comes to me about that is we have all these other, I'm not the only one talking about this. This is, but it's just, I'm just going to explain this in the way it's coming to me personally. And I'm sure you've probably thought about it or heard other people talk about this too, is that we have all of these astrological phenomena going on that are really supporting our awakening, our remembering of ourselves as the one, as the divine, as wholeness, all of that. I've talked a lot about that in previous videos. But at the same time, we have this, the sun peaking in its own activity level. And what NASA is saying is that not only is it peaking, but its peak is actually higher than the usual peak. So it's peaking, but it's peaking extra. So that's just really fascinating, right? And again, I don't have absolute answers, but when I feel into that, something that I am feeling a lot, personally, is Jupiter now moving toward its conjunction with Uranus, which will happen in April of 2024. And I'm feeling that energetic building as one of the many things, that's a primary thing that I feel holding us and supporting us to come into our precise relationship and our alignment, total radical alignment and grounding with ourselves as the truth of the divine itself. And if at the same time, we also have the sun extra alive, throwing out much bigger than usual coronal mass ejections, having these, it's just so extra alive right now. And literally, this is not woo, this is literal physical truth. We're having so much more direct contact by those waves of the energetics being emitted by the sun. So if I feel into that, just again, not trying to give a truth to it, just what's coming to me is it feels like yet another way in which we're being supported and guided to just come straight into the truth of the divine, the truth of source itself, and to be releasing the sunlight. Sunlight to me is very, very clearing. It's very purifying in its pure form. And so I feel it in my own energy body, my own energy system. Like, obviously it's a source of light, literally, literally. But it's relatively very close to us and compared to other stars, right? And so I feel like when I feel into my own relationship with the sun and I feel it, I feel when it's so active and so alive, I feel it basically like giving us this chance to just, it's like trying to pull us in a way, like yeah, clear and clear and clear and clear from all the density of our time of forgetting, basically, because we're now moving into a time of remembering. And I feel like one way to think of the sun and its aliveness, such its strong aliveness right now, is maybe it's part of the dance of this intense remembering. Yeah, that's my feeling about it. But I'm sure there's so much more there, so much more there. I mean, just barely begun to really, really, really sit with this whole sense of the sun. I'm gonna just feel in for a minute and see if there's anything else that wants to be said about that particular theme. Okay, so yeah, so then the other component that feels so crucial when I'm thinking of, how I'm being called to hold space for ascension, if you want to, that's for lack of a better word, but also I'm holding space literally for you perhaps to be learning astrology, to be coming into your own relationship with astrology and your own relationship with the cosmos and with life, with yourself. Something, again, that I mentioned at the beginning that's so key to me in the way that I'm going to be holding everything I do, but especially the workshop I have coming up, the Anatomy and the Soul of the Cosmos workshop, and then very much so the Astrology 101 course. Key component here, two things. Number one, as we are coming into our relationship with all of these beings, perhaps in a new way, perhaps partly, bringing along some of the tradition, and then also being with what's alive now, is that it needs to be coming through each one of us, not just me, not just whoever. Part of what I personally am being asked to let go of, and I think is really important, really crucial to be letting go of, is this top-down authoritarian version of a teacher guru. Again, I think, having teachers who are wise and are bringing wisdom that we need is phenomenal. I mean, I am so grateful for the people I would consider my teachers, right? Like, I am so grateful to have been learning from and still learning from so many amazing, wise beings. Many of them are going to be the guest speakers in the astrology course I'm holding. And I mean, they're there for a reason because they're amazing, right? And they have a lot to teach. And I feel like I also have some things to teach, but the real role that I feel like I hold is partly to bring knowledge, but it's mostly, actually, my role is actually a sacred container holder. So again, I have my moon in Virgo on my Virgo ascendant, opposite my Pisces sun, right? And lots of other things there. But so one of my big roles, like, you could just look at my two-dimensional chart and see this. One of my big roles is to basically be like a temple keeper. And so that's what I feel like my role is, even as a teacher of astrology, isn't so much to be a teacher of astrology. It is that. I also have my Jupiter in my 9th house. That's pretty darn Jupiterian. I definitely am here to be a teacher, but a teacher in a sacred temple space, where the point really actually is about holding the space for that wisdom to be coming alive and coming through as you, as me, but also as you and you and you and you and you. And so I'm really excited about this. Okay. So for example, in the workshop, the Anatomy and Soul of the Cosmos workshop, one of the things that I am going to be doing, and then I'll be doing this much more extensively in the Astrology 101 course, is I'm creating in the teachable course, where the class is going to be housed permanently, even after the live workshop. I'm making sections for each part of the cosmos, not every single planet, because that's more the astrology course, but in the Anatomy and Soul of the Cosmos workshop, we're going to be going through every component of our solar system. So the sun, the inner planets, the outer planets, the centaurs, the asteroid belt, the Kuiper belt, the Oort cloud, and then the 4 main galactic points. So I'll be teaching the astronomy of what those parts of our solar system and beyond are. And I will be talking about what current astrologers and myself tend to think of those components of our cosmos as being related to in astrology, right? So, for example, the inner planets are more personal and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But what I'm then doing is I'm creating these sections in the course itself where part of my hope and my goal is going to be both in for the workshop, but again, especially for the Astrology 101 course, is that I'm going to hold this in a very sacred temple-like way so that we not only are going to learn what has been taught previously, but we're going to, as a collective, have an opportunity to share with each other what is birthing through you. So when you sit with the sun, and you think about maybe the sun, the moment of where the sun was, the moment you were born, and what the whole cosmos was doing, and you just focus on the sun. What comes alive in you? What does that sun seem to be holding space for or representing, or what does it feel like in your body to think about the sun, where it was in the moment you were born? Number two, if you think about all this, the scientific aspects of the sun itself, this 11-year cycle, et cetera, what comes alive in you? So that, because as we do that, as we go, certainly in this workshop, but then when we're doing this Astrology 101 course, as we're going through the whole year, it's not, we're not perpetuating this way of being where it's all about bowing down to the one and only guru who has all the answers, right? Like, I mean, that's an extreme, but it's really, really, really about both learning from history, learning from tradition, honoring that, but then letting it come alive through you, because you have just as much wisdom innately about life as I do, as anyone does. We're all alive. We're all beings of this cosmos, literally, literally, right? So I want to learn from you as much as, I'm here to teach anything, quote unquote. And I'm really excited about that. I mean, I certainly haven't heard anybody talk about, the 11-year cycle of the sun and how that plays into our relationship to the sun astrologically. Maybe someone is, and if they are, please tell me, because I would love to know how they're talking about it. But I feel so much in astrology wanting to come back alive in a whole new way. And it's not going to be through me. It's not going to be through XYZ teacher out there. I think it's going to be through all of us together doing this, because we're all puzzle pieces of this divine awakening, remembering, literally. Okay, one more component that I feel, it's really important to me, and I want to name it. So going along with that, another thing that is crucial to me in the way that I'm feeling called to approach astrology, but also in the way that I approach most things, usually, hopefully, is the perspective on astrology and on life of holding reverence and an honoring of everything. So, okay, so for example, when I'm having so many thoughts at the same time. All right. I'm trying to focus. Okay, so for example, when we're sitting with our relationship with the sun, like I've said, there have been, humans have had a relationship, a conscious relationship with the sun for as long as humans have existed, because the sun is right there. It's blatantly, it's very hard not to notice, right? And clearly we've been in relationship with the sun in all kinds of ways for eons. So that's not new. And there's tons and tons of precedents for how we conceive of the sun, so much history on our way of relating to the sun, the mythology associated with the sun, the stories associated with the sun, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so again, not throwing that away. A lot of it is so beautiful, so needed, so deeply wise, so wise. Okay. And this is another part that's super crucial to me is that when we are sitting and trying to be with our relationship to the sun, especially like an astrology chart, really key and important to me that we approach every being of the cosmos, and that includes humans, actually, that includes clients, that includes each other, that includes ourselves, with an honoring and a reverence of what actually is in that given moment. Okay, so to break that down a little bit. So for example, just even on a physical level, on a scientific level, the sun, like I've just talked about, is a dynamic, alive being. So it's not static. It is never exactly the same. From moment to moment to moment to moment, it's alive and changing constantly. I mean, that's true. You can see it when you see, the videos of it so alive. That's true, number one. But number two, it's never in the same place twice. Even though here on Earth, we have we have our experience of sunrises and sunsets, and that seems very cyclical. And we have our relationship to the sun in terms of seasons. So if you track the sunrises and sunsets, they will go lower in the sky to higher in the sky. In the summertime, the sun will rise much higher. In the winter, even the sun at noon will be the sun at noon will be much lower than the sun at noon in the summer, especially if you're at high closer to the poles. So there are these rhythms that seem to repeat throughout a year, and they do. But even then, like I've just talked about, the sun has this 11-year cycle where the poles are flipping. So even, in 2024 to 2025, the sun, if let's say we're at January 22nd, 2024 today, which is when I'm recording this, and let's say we fast forward a year from now, the sun might look like it's in the exact same place compared to where we are on Earth, and it probably is, but it won't be in the same part of its cycle, right? Because it has this 11-year, or really actually a 22-year cycle. Okay, number one, that. Number two, though, the sun and our whole solar system are constantly moving around the galactic center. So then there's this humongous, extremely long cycle of our galaxy, our solar system going around our galaxy. Okay. And then our galaxy is constantly moving as well. And then, it's like cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle. So even when, let's say it's January 22nd, 2024 versus January 22nd, 2025 versus whatever, even though the sun might appear compared to Earth in the same place, it's not. And we're not. So it's a literal truth that we're constantly in motion and we're constantly in change. So when we are sitting with anything, this is a metaphor for so many things, truly. But let's take the sun. It is absolutely, like, I almost could cry. It's so crucial to me that we sit with a sense of reverence and honoring of the actual truth and the actual reality of who that sun is in this given moment. And that we honor it and we be with it as the alive, incredibly powerful being that it actually is, right? Like the sun is so much bigger than the earth. It's massive. And like how arrogant that we could think that we're alive and it's not, or we have intelligence and it doesn't. Like that just, if I really sit back and think about it, it's like, wow, we've gotten in a mode in the last since the Enlightenment in particular of commodifying things, of objectifying, like thinking of things other than the human brain as objects, right? Including the sun and the planets. And they're not. They're objects. They exist. But they're alive. They're not just a ball of fire out there or a rock out there or whatever. They're beings, just like we're beings. We're of the cosmos. So if we are alive and we are beings and we are cognizant, aware beings, why wouldn't everything else be? Yeah, and just I'll end with this. So just to give an example to kind of bring it down to earth literally a little bit more. So this also it reminds me, not kind of, it does remind me of being a therapist or being a client of a therapist even, right? So I was a therapist for a really long time, and the same set of values is so alive in me when I'm with clients, for example. But I'm thinking of a time when I was the client. So when I was 24, I got my master's degree in clinical social work, and I got my master's degree from Smith College School for Social Work, which is, really well known, really highly respected school. Okay. And on the same day I graduated, there was a master's degree cohort graduating, and then there was also a doctoral degree cohort graduating. And a year went by, and I had a really, really pretty traumatic, very traumatic experience in a job, in one of my first social work jobs out of grad school. And I really needed to talk to a therapist because it was very traumatic. So, so long story short, one of the things I really wanted help with was that in this experience that I had at my job, I normally had a very, very strong relationship to the spirit world. And that's not something I talked about at work, but in my personal life, that was very important to me. And so part of often, what this is very common when a traumatic experience happens, is that a person might experience a disconnect from their sense. If they are very connected to the spirit world, that's not uncommon to then feel suddenly not connected to it. So I found a therapist through Smith, actually, who had actually graduated from the doctoral program the same day I graduated from my master's program, interestingly. So I figured, she'd be a really, really good therapist because, again, Smith is a great program. She had her doctorate, and in order to even apply for the doctoral program, you have to have lots of experience as a therapist. So I'm sure she was. I'm sure she was very well trained. I'm sure she was, excellent in lots of levels. But the thing was, when I went to go talk to her, this is a whole other topic, but of course, traditional psychotherapy doesn't tend to address spirituality. And if you do address spirituality, there's a very specific way you're supposed to do it, because you are meant to be objective, and you, of course, would never want to push your own spiritual beliefs onto a client. Obviously, I mean, of course, right? Definitely. I fully believe that. And I never would either myself. But the thing is, I had this very specific need as the client to be seen and met in the place I was in that moment, which was that I personally had a very strong relationship with the spirit world and I was feeling disconnected from it. So this therapist, I'm guessing, was probably not particularly spiritual. And I could see it in her that she had like a script that she was going by in her mind, how to be with a client who comes in with spiritual beliefs. And I could just feel it. She wasn't actually being with me. She was being with her script. And so I said, I had the session and I said, okay, thank you so much. And then I did not go back, right? I went and found another amazing therapist who also highly trained in all of that, but also happens to be very, very gifted in being with people who are highly spiritual like me, right? And within, I don't know, like 20 minutes, I was connected back with the spirit world. And it was like, hallelujah, thank you so much. Right. Because the contrast was the first therapist was so well intentioned, but she wasn't actually present with me, like the real actual soul being of me and what I really needed. So one of the first things you learn in training to be a psychotherapist, and lots of you are psychotherapists, so you know this, meet the client where they are. She was not meeting me where I was. She was meeting her script where it was. And it's like, she was probably in a difficult position because she probably wasn't. Anyway, but the other therapist absolutely 1000% got it, could feel it, saw where I was, met me where I was, right? So when we are, same thing, this is such a huge metaphor for so many things in life. But specifically, to get to my point, specifically when we are in this role of coming into relationship with the cosmos or with anything, it is absolutely, again, I feel like I could cry. It's so crucial to me that we meet the beings, we meet life where it actually is, not where we think it is, not the script we have about it. So like when we're thinking about the sun and we think about that two-dimensional circle with the dot, we have a whole script about, okay, the sun means this is where I'm going to shine in my life. And so like my sun is in my 7th house in Pisces. So I'm going to shine in relationship to others. And I might like give away myself. Not that that's untrue. I have had moments in my life where that's been true, but that's so I'm following a script, right? And it's not that it is going to be necessarily totally wrong, because it's not wrong, but it's not actually being with me. That sun in my 7th house in Pisces has infinite layers to it. And the only way you know where the person, the actual being, is in their expression of those infinite possibilities of the sun in Pisces in 7th house is to meet the being where they are and feel it, be with it. And same thing with our relationship to the actual sun. Like what's coming alive in us in our own relating to this massive, alive being, truly conscious in whatever way, some way that I personally can't conceive of in this moment, at least. But it is definitely alive, right? And obviously literally has massive relationship with us. Yeah, it's just, there's so much more there, so much more there. And if that intrigues you, join the entire Astrology 101 course, because that's where we're really going to be diving deeply into this, even not only in this first year, but actually in the second, third, fourth years, more and more and more and more deeply. Yeah. Yeah, so many components to all of that. And yeah, again, I feel emotional about it because I have seen firsthand, not only in astrology, also in social work, also just in the world, we can see so many ways in which um, life is not honored. It's not treated with reverence. It's not, obviously there's very extreme examples of that, but in the world. But I've also seen it in astrology so often. I can't even count the number of clients I've had come to me saying that they've been um, uh, really, really hurt by the way that astrologers have approached their chart, and or them or whatever it is. And I certainly saw that in social work. That's a possibility in anything, everywhere, just in life. And so when I'm sitting here holding space for you, or for us all to be being with the cosmos, being with ourselves, being with each other, again, one of my most fundamental, I mean, maybe my top fundamental value and commitment in it all is to meet it and be present with this sense of reverence, this sense of honoring, and often a sense of deep silence, deep listening, just being. Yeah, so that these beings can speak to us through us. Yeah. Okay. So much more. So much more. But anyway, all right. If this intrigues you, certainly let me know in the comments. I would love to hear, like and comment and subscribe and all of that, to this YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. And absolutely, please join me for the Anatomy and Soul of the Cosmos workshop, which is going to be live, but also recorded on Thursday, January 25th, 2024. And then starting on February 1st, 2024, is the Infinite Soul Wisdom Astrology 101 course, which will be a 13-month course. So exciting. Such amazing guest speakers. I mean, it'll mostly be with me, but it's also going to include guest speakers who are Heather Ensworth, Melanie Reinhardt, who just joined. Yay, yay, yay. So Heather Ensworth, Melanie Reinhardt, Julia Balaz, Kelley Hunter, and Chris Skidmore. And yeah, you can learn more about all of it at the link with this video. If you are interested in possibly joining the astrology course, the whole year course, but you are not sure for any reason, certainly email me, livingtheonelight@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer questions. And if you want to meet with me briefly, I do have a little bit of time in the next week or so when I could do that. So I'm happy to do that if that would help you to decide if it is a right match for you. Yeah, I think that's it for this moment. So much coming alive. And yeah, maybe I'm guessing a lot of you are feeling it too. Just like, yeah. Pluto is now in Aquarius. We're coming into this remembering. We're coming into this remembering of ourselves as wholeness. And then, in that, I just feel so much coming alive. Like all of what I just talked about is just right there. All right. Thank you so much for being in this journey with me. And I'll see you soon.